You've been listening to the Money Answer Show with Jordan Goodman. If you have a question for Jordan or his guest, please call us now at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now back to Jordan.
Welcome back to the Money Answer Show. This is Jordan Goodman, your host. My guest for this half hour is Hilary Hendershot. She is a certified financial planner. Her website is hilaryhendershot.com, and she also has a podcast called Profit Boss Radio. Welcome to the show, Hilary.
Thanks, Jordan. I'm excited to be here.
Let's just start with your background a little bit in becoming a financial planner and kind of what led up to becoming a financial planner.
You bet. It's really twofold, the story that brought me to where I am today. First of all, I'm the daughter of one of the first guys to call himself a fiduciary financial planner. So most people don't realize that the financial planning industry is really relatively new. And it started as Wall Street sort of smile and dial, churn 'em and burn 'em stockbrokers, kind of Wolf of Wall Street kind of stuff. And my father wasn't a stockbroker. He was a life insurance salesman. He converted his practice to a fee-only practice when I was about 3 years old. And so it's really all I've ever known. When I got out of college, he wanted me to join the business. I wanted to do something sexy, so I didn't come on as in the financial planning business. Instead, I went and cut my teeth at a couple of startups and eventually ended up in his practice in my late 20s after sort of going through the dot-com bust in Silicon Valley. I was a recruiter who was making multiple six figures and then nothing. And so that's how I got my start in the financial planning world. But a few years after I got started, I realized I myself had a financial problem. I was an overspender. I was in chronic debt. I constantly was borrowing money, having financial emergencies. And so I became an expert on behavioral finance and money psychology and transformed my own financial life. And now I layer all those teachings into what I write about and talk about on my blog and on Profit Boss Radio. So it's really kind of that experiential part and then the formal learning part.
And tell us about your clientele. Is it mostly women or?
I do work mostly with women. I help women secure their financial futures, typically women who have lost a spouse or are facing the loss of a spouse through death or illness, divorce, and also answer questions like when and how to claim Social Security, etc.
Now you have what you call the money operating systems. What is that and how can people use that to improve their financial condition?
The money operating system is a term and a technology that I've trademarked to describe what I discovered and what I isolated as the core of what was my financial problem and what is kind of the financial limiter for most people is that turns out that money in our life is very psychology based. So money is very conceptual. I don't know how much you've talked about this on your show. I'm sure you've touched on it, but we invented money. Human beings invented money. It doesn't actually exist in reality. Like cash isn't money. Credit cards aren't money. It's really hard to actually grapple with. And so as kids, we're confused. And so we anchor on a simplistic superstition that some adult around us says or makes true about money. For example, money doesn't grow on trees, or you have to work hard for money, or money is the root of all evil, or in my case, there's never enough money. And counterintuitively, in order to manifest there's never enough money, because I strongly believe that was my deeply held belief about money. When money came into my life, the only thing to do was spend it. I had to get it out of my ecosystem so that I could continue to live in a world where there wasn't enough money. And so it was really identifying that as a subconscious belief and then sort of upending it that allowed me to produce a sea change in my own personal financial system. And so I teach about these money operating systems to help people identify what they got imprinted with in their childhood. So in case, for most people, it's not working out exactly the way they hoped or thought it would. And some people avoid that fate. But for a lot of people, money is a source of stress and anxiety. And so this is a tool to really help people transform both their results and their experience of money.
So maybe describe specifically, you get a client and you apply the money operating system to them. What does that mean? Is it a budgeting or is it psychological? What is it actually doing for somebody?
Sure. So applying the money operating system technology in a one-on-one fashion, it can be powerful. Let's take, for example, a client who came to me last year. She's in her 60s. She has $500,000 saved, but she also is terribly distressed that she's spending more money than she should be. She feels the anxiety to save a lot more, much more quickly, but her experience is she can't do it. So we sit down and we look at what's going on in her life, what's the underlying belief that's at play. And in this case, hers is money makes me valuable, and she's trading money for friendships. So she doesn't have a thriving social life, so she's taking herself out. She's paying too much for dinners out with friends, for vacations with people she thinks she should be socializing with. And so identifying this and really focusing on building thriving, authentic, vulnerable relationships with people helps her then supplant that need to sort of buy friends, relationships, and social capital. Does that make sense?
So a lot of it is the behavioral finance you were talking about and applying that to somebody's situation.
It is. I mean, you can understand. It would be intuitive. For example, someone like me in the past with the money operating system, there's never enough money, would be afraid to invest, and so I might be the bridge to help them understand an evidence-based way to invest. Another money operating system is money is complicated. These people often have a lot of drama about money in their families. They maybe don't tell the whole truth, or they're angry at people, they're in conflict. And so understanding that that's just a way to relate to money, that it doesn't have to be that way, can often help really heal family rifts and drama, especially when there's money involved. I mean, I'm sure you know, the more money in a family, often the more drama and conflict about it. And so understanding these kinds of, like I call them superstitions about money and how they're at play can heal family relationships.
Yeah. So you understand that part. What do you think is the biggest predictor of wealth, financial freedom, basically financial success?
So there's a gentleman who wrote a book. He interviewed 1,000 millionaires, and he said that the number one predictor of financial success is what he calls an internal locus of control, which essentially means that rich people believe they create their life and their results. So they take responsibility for the results that they produce. And when I meet someone and he or she is saying to me, "Oh, the world did it to me. I never had a chance. It's unfair. I was a victim," I know that there's a psychological game at play here, and that they're never going to achieve true financial freedom until they actually decide to locate that responsibility for their results internally versus externally.
And how do you do that to somebody? Is the way they're brought up? I mean, can you turn somebody from kind of victim consciousness to being a master of their own fate?
Oh, no. Well, no. No, that has to be done by them. I mean, people have to want help. It's a really unique set of circumstances for a person to get great and valuable advice and implement it in their lives from a coach or a financial advisor, because they have to recognize that they need help. They have to ask for help, and they have to accept the help from that professional or coach or financial advisor that they choose. And so I don't go to bat with a big axe and a baseball bat and all these tools that I'm going to sort of beat people over the head with until they do the right thing. People have to be in a situation of wanting to move forward. And you can imagine most people who hire a financial advisor have, maybe $500,000 in investable assets. They've surmounted some of their financial psychological struggles. And so, but I know that there's a lot of people out there who want to, but don't have the access to it. So that's really why I created Profit Boss Radio, so that I can speak to people in a mass market, sort of free to consume way that also allows me to run a profitable business. And they can get access to a conversation that says, hey, if you're not producing the results that you want, it's possible to actually change. You're not fundamentally broken or missing something. Rich people aren't special. That's what I used to believe. Rich people are special and I'm not. But this is a skill set that you can learn by listening to people like Jordan Goodman and learning. So reading personal finance books, investment books, understanding the body of knowledge that's out there and learning the skills.
Very good. So one of the clients you deal with a lot is dealing with divorce. in many cases, the women are not that financially savvy, or they've been dependent on the man one way or the other. How do you help them prepare for such a major change in their financial lives?
Yeah, it's very, very emotional. So the first thing we do, and I firmly believe my experience with people is that the best way to cure emotional overwhelm, to begin to cure emotional overwhelm, is to really dig into the actual numbers. So it's important to be a private investigator. If you're preparing for a divorce, we're going to look at what are your bills? How much does it cost to stay in the family home? What are you spending on lifestyle expenses? What's your income? If you're working, what's your solo income? What's your husband's income or soon to be ex-partner's income? What are the assets? Look at your net worth. And these are numbers, it may seem simple to you, Jordan, but most people don't know how much money is coming in, how much is going out. And so we really need to get a handle on what it's going to take for you to live. And then you also want to know where the assets in the bank accounts are so that you can take stock, because they're going to be split in a way that through the divorce process, those assets are going to be split in a way that's dictated by the laws of your state. And so it's important we have a good handle on what's happening.
Do you often find that spouses hide assets from another and they need forensic accountants and that kind of thing to figure out what's actually there?
Sometimes. Maybe just the way I sort of run my practice and my life, being very transparent and expecting people to do the best, I don't come across too much of that. I find a lot of emotional resistance. So a lot of times people are very combative. I have seen, for example, because the year that the divorce takes place is the year that income is logged. So we sort of take a snapshot. And if the husband makes 200 and the wife makes 100, then the wife is going to be entitled to spousal support based on that differential, which is a $100,000 income difference. And so sometimes, the husband will say, right, and I'm speaking in stereotypes. Like sometimes the wife makes more than the husband, but sometimes that spouse who earns more will say, I'm just going to work 3/4 time, or oops, I lost my job, or gosh, I just don't find as much consulting gigs this year. And so it's not hiding, but it's also not necessarily doing the noble thing. Kind of what do they say? Biting your nose, shooting your nose to spite the face. I can't remember.
All right, we're going to take a break. This is Jordan Goodman of the Money Answer Show. My guest this half hour is Hilary Hendershot. She is a financial planner based in California. She also has a radio show called the Profit Boss Radio podcast. You can find out more about her at her website, which is hilaryhendershot.com, spelled HILARYHENDERSHOTT.com, and also ProfitBossRadio.com. We'll be back after this.
The latest business information is made simple with the Voice America Business Network. The professionals in the business world bring you live talk radio shows featuring an array of business topics, strategies for building wealth, sales and marketing, stock trading, investing, and business technology. Voice America Business hosts are professionals in their fields and bring to the airwaves weekly business discussions that offer up-to-date information, advice, and education. The Voice America Business Network. The bottom line in business talk.
There are two types of leaders in business. Those who are nice, compassionate people, and frankly, they are the people who fail to get a lot done. Then there are those who can get everything done and so much more. But they are greedy, unethical, and self-centered. The Compassionate Samurai Business Hour with Kathy Fairbanks finds a way to use the best of both types of leaders to help you create a dynamic roadmap to success. Tune in every Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific Time, 4 p.m. Eastern on Voice America Business. Higher education faces lots of changes. If you are a student, educator, or in the workforce, you'll want to tune into Big Beacon Radio, transforming higher education. Your host, Dave Goldberg, and his guests will explore the innovations that higher education adopts as it reinvents itself. The world of higher education is constantly changing, Stay on top and stay ahead of the rest. Big Beacon Radio, transforming higher education. Listen Mondays at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern on the Voice America Business Channel.
Are you a business leader or executive that wants to achieve more? Not just in it for profit, but to do work you find meaningful that adds more value to more people in more ways. Listen for the Business Elevation Show with host Chris Cooper. You'll hear from successful achievers from around the world with the passion and experience to offer invaluable guidance. The Business Elevation Show can be heard live on Fridays at 8 a.m. US Pacific Time, usually 4 p.m. UK, on the Voice America Business Channel. Be more, achieve more.
You've been listening to the Money Answer Show with Jordan Goodman. If you have a question for Jordan or his guest, please call us now at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now back to Jordan.
Welcome back to the Money Answer Show. This is Jordan Goodman, your host. My guest this half hour is Hilary Hendershot. She is a financial planner dealing mostly with women in the California area. She also has a podcast called Profit Boss Radio. Welcome back to the show, Hilary.
Thank you so much.
So you have what you call the 8 principles of financial freedom. We don't have time to go through all of them, but some of the most important principles in financial freedom that you have?
So, first of all, people sort of hand wave the importance of understanding cash flow. No matter how rich or poor or in debt or wealthy you are, you've got to understand how much is coming in and how much is going out. Beyond that, you want to master that cash flow, give each dollar a job as it comes into your ecosystem. I believe firmly in the value of automating by deciding how much every dollar that comes in, I'm going to send $300 to this account, $1,000 to this savings account. I'm going to spend $2,000 in this next 30-day period. I'm getting very specific. Obviously, your numbers aren't going to match identically. But in that way, you can avoid the problem of what most people do, which is they spend first and save second. And, I recently had David Bach on my show, and he said people need to tremendously increase their savings rate. I mean, he just said it flat out. And that's the thing people don't want to hear, because it involves foregoing pleasures today in order to have peace of mind and freedom and dignity tomorrow. And he said, most people need to triple their savings rate. And I thought, I've never said it that directly, but that really is it. I mean, most people think they have an earning problem, but what they actually have is a spending problem. So you can surmount a spending problem by deciding beforehand how much of each paycheck you will put in a spending account. I firmly swear by that process. If you have a process that works, great, more power to you. But if you don't, that's what I recommend. And then it's important to follow evidence-based practices. I mean, there's a whole cohort of finance experts, so people who've won Nobel Prizes in terms of looking at markets and what's possible to earn from the stock market. And we can really stand on the shoulders of giants at this point. It's very easy to buy very low-cost ETFs and index funds that 9 times out of 10 have a higher performance internal rate of return than most other investments that smaller investors, ordinary investors, can get their hands on. And so really the smart principles of wealth construction and retention involve very basic principles, but you have to master your psychology, don't you?
Now, we've just had a new president sworn in, and how do you think that's going to affect the investing environment? The market's had a big run since the election. Is that going to continue? Are there landmines ahead? What is your outlook for investing under the Trump presidency?
Yeah, I did a whole episode on this, how the presidential election will affect your investments. And the truth is that it turns out the presidency doesn't impact either the economy or the stock market very much at all. As you've said, the market voted yes to Trump, meaning that after his election was announced, we saw great surges in all of the major indexes when most pundits were predicting significant cuts, right? So a lot of people were shorting the market on the day the stock market opened and the Trump presidency was official, but that's not what happened. And I think that really speaks to the inability of anyone to predict the stock market. So I think that we've seen several years of sideways returns in the stock market, and we're just now beginning to see what you might call a bull market. And, I don't know where it will go in the short run, but I do know that year over year, for the last 90 years at least, 100 years at least, that the stock market has produced a 9.5% to 10.5% return. And I rest my professional credentials on that return, on harnessing that return, harvesting that return for clients.
So you think it's better for most people to do index funds instead of picking individual stocks or actively managed funds?
I think, in my opinion, the evidence that supports that is irrefutable at this point, that it's very difficult to consistently, reliably beat the market, and most people shouldn't try.
Now, how about bonds? Do you think interest rates are going to be rising more, and what role should bonds play in somebody's growth portfolio?
Sure. So really the only reason to hold bonds is because when you're in retirement, when you're taking money from that portfolio, you can't be in a position where your portfolio loses a ton of value in 1 year because it's a terrible market, and you have to take a lot of money out because you need it for your income to pay your expenses. And so bonds buffer that volatility. So you're not going to get the high highs, but you're also not going to get the low lows. And so I believe in keeping a consistent allocation to bonds. There's a lot of common wisdom that people as they age want more and more and more bonds. But the truth is, at age 65, if you retire at age 65, you've likely got 30 or more years of retirement to pay for. And you need a strong risk reward ratio. You need those returns of the stock market, which don't come from bonds. So I'm less of a fan of bonds than most advisors, sort of that common wisdom. That said, most of my clients have between 15 and 35% allocation of bonds in their portfolio.
And how about overseas or even emerging markets? I mean, some would say it's going to be a very good time. The economy is growing. Some would say we're going to get into trade wars, so it'll be a terrible time to be overseas. Where do you stand?
So if you have a globally diversified portfolio, then you are essentially best poised to take advantage of growth no matter where it exists. For example, we recently saw the dollar fell against the euro. The dollar rebounded against the euro, and people were very concerned about this. But what it meant was that the international funds did fantastic because it was cheaper for Americans to buy European products, and those companies had really strong profits. And so I think that these kinds of geopolitical events and trends are really strong evidence for a well-diversified portfolio. No one knows, again, what's going to happen in the short term. I don't attempt to predict short-term events. And I say to my clients, I never say anything to you that doesn't come true. You'll never have to track my predictions because I'm not going to make any. I'm simply going to put you in an investment portfolio that has you win no matter what. And so far in my 16 years, I've been able to do that consistently. I've never had a client fail to produce the results we agreed that were their goals. So I'm proud of that.
That sounds very good. Well, thanks so much. My guest this half hour has been Hilary Hendershot. She's a financial planner based in Silicon Valley, California. You can find out more about her at her website, which is, again, Hilary, Hilary, Hendershot, HenderShott.com. And she also has a podcast called Profit Boss Radio. Thanks so much for being on the Money Answer Show, Hilary.
Thank you.
Thanks again. We'll be back next week with another edition of the Money Answer Show. Goodbye for now.
Thank you for joining Jordan Goodman and the Money Answer Show. If you have a question for Jordan, please visit his website at www.moneyanswers.com. And be sure to tune in every Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, right here on Voice America Business. See you next week.
Thanks again for listening to the preceding program, brought to you on the Voice America Business Channel. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericabusiness.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the preceding program are strictly those of the hosts or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.